Well, should we kick off then? So, welcome everyone. My name's James. I work for Breedr. I'm joined by my friend Phoebe. Phoebe, do you want to say something a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a dairy vet, and I do dairy consultancy and working for an American animal health company, and I cover the UK and Ireland.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're going to be about, we hope, about half an hour this evening. Do ask questions, use the chat as we go through. You know, this is a real opportunity for you to find out more about sort of data-driven calf health. I would be very remiss if I didn't just pander and just show you something that we launched in Breedr about a couple of weeks ago, which is live weight trading, and it's available on the mobile app as well. But you can see these cattle were listed, and within 18 hours they were sold. And we've got offers from all over the country. So these Scottish bullocks are hopefully sold as well, and there's loads of cattle in here. So if you have stores to sell, or you've got calves to sell, this is the place to do it. So you know, I would be remiss if I didn't pander and show this, but this is it. You can find this in your Breedr app if you're not already signed up. So Phoebe, this evening we're talking about calf health, and you know what you are not only a dairy vet, but also a little bit of an expert in calf health. And I'm sort of going to turn over to you for the next sort of 10 minutes. But whilst we're going through, hopefully there'll be a few questions, sure. and then at the end we can have a bit of a chat. Does that sound like a good idea?
Sounds good to me. Yeah, definitely. Perfect. I'll just share my screen if that's okay, and then I can yeah. So can you see that okay?
We can indeed. They're all silent, okay, but I will give you feedback and make the right noises.
Perfect, brilliant. Yeah, so I have got an interest in calf health and welfare, and you know, I've studied, I've done my certificate in New Zealand in calf health as well. So it's something that I am passionate about. And again, you know, good calf health, it means a good herd and the future, really. So getting that right at this stage is really, really important. So I just want to briefly explain, when I was previously a lecturer at the Royal Agricultural University, but part of that was I supported the management of the calf rearing unit. So we had a non-purpose built unit where we were getting calves from an unknown source at about 3 weeks old, and rearing them past weaning, and then selling them on. So we had them for about 12 weeks or so, and I was quite keen to see, you know, because margins were tight, I was quite keen to see how we could improve our calf rearing, and look at a certain number of different factors to see if we could get the best product in a commercial setting. I didn't really want to do it as a university experiment, because I felt like I wanted to learn things that we could show other farmers. So there's some of the calves we had, and actually one of the things we wanted to do was reduce antibiotic usage. That was a massive thing, and what we felt was there was a lot of routine sort of stuff done, and I wanted to see if I could do that, and we did a really great job. We targeted 4 areas. We targeted lowering the stress, to look at the environment, keeping things quiet, batches and keeping batches together, and trying to not disturb them. We try to look at disease recognition, so training the people working on there, observing the calves regularly and learning what to spot, looking at using on-farm diagnostics, and are there any little tools that we could have used to try and guide us on treatment protocols. And then I helped devise a simple treatment protocol which I wanted everyone to follow, and the way we did it was we did a lot of monitoring as well, which I think was key. And what I could therefore do is adjust that to really fine-tune it to get something that's really good for our unit. The other thing was reducing disease. That was another point. So what we did was we looked at the bedding, the cleaning routines, the biosecurity, and the last thing was increasing the immune status. So I wanted the calves to be as strong as possible. Now, the one thing that we always talk about is colostrum, and really good colostrum, and that's obviously a golden rule. You know, you get the colostrum right, your calf is got the best start to life, and then it's how you look after it. In the system we had no control over that. We were just getting them from lots of different farms. So we had the calf in front of us with very little history. So we had to try and boost their immune while they're on our farm. So the use of vaccines, good quality food and plenty of it in front of them, and trying to keep things low stress, because stress releases hormone cortisol, which affects the immune system and can reduce it, and therefore calves can get ill. So that was our big one. And within doing that, within one batch to the next batch, we've saved over £1,000, £1,200 on antibiotics. And we also reduced critical antibiotics, and a lot of it was TLC when we were dealing with them. So we were shortlisted for the Antibiotic Guardian Awards. Unfortunately, we didn't win it, but we were in the top 5 out of all the people that applied for that. So that was a really good thing there. And something quite proud about. But I think there was a lot of learnings that we tried to therefore then show farmers, this is how you can do it, you know, to save money. And again, we didn't have a lot of investment. We didn't have a lot of money to put into this unit. So it was a lot of it was, well, what can we do, and what the basic rules we can do to reduce disease. So the way we went about it, and I think if you're a farmer and you want to do something on your farm, the first thing is assess your farm. Where are you at the moment? And you can look at cattle, and observation is enough sometimes, but really to be sure and to be able to check changes, I think having data is really important. So when you assess your farm, what can you measure at that point? And I think that's really, really key. So whether it's levels of disease, again, how many calves are breathing heavily, how many calves needed treatment, stuff like that. And therefore it gives you your starting point. And therefore your aim could be, well, I want less calves to die, or I want calves to grow at a faster rate, or I want calves, and that's your aim. Choose to change one thing normally. Some people sort of change too many things, and I'd say change one thing, keep everything else the same, and then record something. So if you're changing growth rate, if you're aiming for a good growth rate, record weights regularly and and evaluate that. Yeah, so keep a record. And then what we did is, at the time, when we first started, we had a big whiteboard, and we used to do everything with markers on the whiteboard. And one day the shed got flooded and the whiteboard got washed off, and we decided, you know what, we need to upgrade, because you know, the risk of that happening again, we lost a lot of data that way. And so we went electronic, and we tried to do everything using tags and phones and things like that. So definitely, yeah, find out where you are, change something, record what's happening, and then evaluate it. Sit down after a set period and see how much has changed. Now, no change is okay, you know, that's okay, because at least you've tried something. And then also think, well, I've got this far, what else can I do now? What else do I want to improve? And go back to the beginning. Right, I want to improve the next factor, and then go across this, and just keep doing that. And the good thing is, then you've always got proof of what you've done, how it's worked, and how it'll work in the future. And then the last thing I think is, you know, it's quite comfortable to do the thing that you've always done. And you know, change is always a difficult thing to take, and it can be quite scary. But I think we need to have an open mind. And I think lots of things are changing over time. There's lots of innovations, and sometimes we can't always explain it straight away. But it's always worth, you know, being open-minded, listening, thinking, well, okay, I don't need the whole picture, but is it enough just for me to try? And there's no harm trying anything, you know, as long as you've got the risk analysis. But, you know, try it, because, you know, you could be an innovator, and the industry will only progress if there are people willing to try something new and do something new. So again, as a vet, you know, we're rigid in how we're taught. We're taught that you need 100 different tests, and it has to go through a gold standard, and it has to have lots of peer-reviewed articles. And so you'll find lots of vets going, well, I don't want to touch it because it hasn't got all that. But I've learned in time, and actually working on the unit and managing the unit, that actually some of the things I couldn't explain, but I found they worked really well. And I was an advocate and actually believed in it. So I've heard things like oregano, for example, recently, and I just thought, there's no peer-reviewed papers, but I've talked to a lot of farmers who really believe in oregano in their calves. So again, just do that. But that's my little tips. And yeah,
is that oregano you put on the beef as you're grilling the steak, or do you do something?
Well, it's a multi-purpose herb, isn't it? Hopefully you can flavour the animal when it's alive and then eat it when it's yeah on the barbie.
Well, that's really helpful. That's your last slide, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about, and then leave it out there.
Well, so guys, do ask questions. This time is for you. I've got some stuff here we're going to chat through, but do ask some questions. We have a poll, which we're just going to run now, which is, on your farm, do you use a protocol for using antibiotics? So what do you mean by a protocol, Fee? You just want to explain that?
So when using antibiotics on your calves, is there a set number of things that have to be ticked, or they have to have happened before you use an antibiotic, or do you use antibiotics just based on sense or observation?
So what we're saying is that do you measure the temperature before you use the antibiotic?
Do you measure temperature? Do you do a test in any way?
Yeah.
Are your observations based on any science? You know, out there, like the Wisconsin scale, for example, which is an example we used.
What? Go on. What the what scale?
The Wisconsin scale.
Right. We're gonna have to chat about that in a minute.
Oh no. But and there is a stool scale as well, but I can't remember what it's called. The Glasgow stool scale or something.
We do have a question, which is, what do you do with the oregano? So, I mean, do you mix it in the feed? What is the idea?
Apparently there is a feed grade oregano, and in fact, the last and they've done a study. What university now? Where they fed the calves oregano, and it was brilliant for gut health, and they had less scours based on it. And the results, when I saw it, you couldn't prove it wrong, really. And then went to a couple of dairy farms and just mentioned it. They were like, "Oh yeah, I've seen that, and we do that." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" So yeah.
Excellent.
There is a paper. If you Google oregano for calf scour, something like that, it'll come up. And also, the Society for Feed Technologists. If you go onto their website, they'll have their last meeting. They had a couple of talks, and one of them is somebody who did the research with the oregano in calves.
Well, I have learned something this evening, and maybe not something I wanted to learn, but I learned it. So our little poll, only about 33% would use a protocol before using antibiotics, and 22% say it depends. So I suppose let's expand that a little bit. So what does that look? What tools, as a dairy farmer, before I've sold that calf, do I have on my farm to be able to make that decision? You know, what would be a good example? Thermometer would probably be one I would reach for, but I don't. Even then, I still have to text my vet and say, what temperature should it be at? What else would I be wanting?
Are you asking the farmers?
No, I'm asking you. Sorry.
Oh, you're asking me. Okay,
yeah.
Right. So a thermometer is a really good tool, because when an animal gets an infection, the immune response is part of that is raising the body temperature. So it means there is an immune response going on. So it's a good tool to prove there's an infection. But also there are, the thing is, there are other signs that an animal could be ill. And for example, the Wisconsin scale we talked about earlier, what it does is an observation skill. So you look at a number of different factors in the calf. For example, the demeanor. Is a calf dull or is a calf bright? You look at the eyes, and then you look at the nose and then the dryness. You can look at breathing rate. And if you use a number of different tools, then you're going to sort of show how ill an animal is. So for example, I would say if there was only 2 factors, for example, we would just use a painkiller, an anti-inflammatory. But if there were more than that, plus a high temperature, then I would go to an antibiotic. But again, I wouldn't say that's a blanket treatment for all of you to try it. But it'll be more to do with your individual farms. So that would be one example with respiratory disease, which would be the biggest use of antibiotics. The other big disease in calves is scour. So one thing that you can buy are little scour kits. And what you do is you put a bit of the muck inside this little cartridge, and it's got 4 little dippers inside, and it's a bit like a pregnancy test. You wait a few minutes and you see 1 line or 2 lines. 1 line means you're negative, 2 lines means you're positive, and it shows things like crypto, E. coli, and two other to other pathogens as well. So again, you can rule out, is it a viral thing or a bacterial thing going on there? So we used to use them and rule out antibiotics based on that. But really, I think it's a mixture of observation and regular observation, taking a temperature, which I would always guarantee, and if you can do a test like a stool test or anything like that, then that will really help you work out what to do. But in any case, if an animal is feeling down, a painkiller is not going to do any harm in a way. It'll only help.
And I suppose, you know, as all of us being farmers and spending a lot of time around cattle, we would get, you know, we'd be able to look at an animal and be able to very quickly assess. But on many of these dairy farms, there's staff. So what would be your advice? Where would you go for that training? You talked about how you were at university, you found training for everyone who's involved in the unit, but as a sort of a dairy farmer, where could I go to sort of find that for my staff?
Yeah, so for example, we at the RAU started a calf rearing course, and we had a lot of people coming on that, which was great. And we went through protocols, and we went through assessing animals and doing those sort of things. So I'd say look out for that. Otherwise, to be honest, I think get your vet to come with you, spend an hour or two with your vets to go through it all. And yes, okay, the cost of the vet for that moment in time is there, but in the long run it means that you can therefore take more responsibility and therefore maybe be more strategic on when you actually need a vet and when you can do more. So I'd say yeah, if you can't find a course locally, then maybe get your vet to give you a 1 hour demonstration and sit down and go through it all.
Have you ever come across what I would call Sunday syndrome on a dairy farm with calves, when you've got sort of the replacement herdsman on a Sunday?
Yeah,
Have you got any advice for these guys about how they can reduce sort of Sunday syndrome?
I think so. We wrote it on a whiteboard, the protocol, and so what we said. What someone has to do is they have to come in. They've got to sign their signature on the top that they've actually turned up and looked at the animal. I suppose if you're not on the farm, you can't be 100% sure. I can't. You know, you can never guarantee it.
No, you
but
can't.
I think it's putting the protocol, and we had it on the whiteboard. We had a protocol up there. We had a tick box for the Sunday farmer to tick to make sure they've gone through the different bits of routine, and to sign off when they leave as well, so that we know those sort of bits. So I think it's just making sure that they're provided with everything, and if they don't do it well, I
have to admit, your calf rearing unit was lovely. It was really nice.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a very nice shed and very well set up. So
yeah, I think the big thing with that was I didn't want to be in a purpose-built calf shed, because I thought, how many people have the luxury of having one of those? So it was in a cattle shed. We did have issues in that shed, so the drainage was poor.
Yeah.
So water used to pool in the middle, and we used to get quite a lot of damp. Because it was a cattle shed, we had a lot of wind coming through, so we did suffer from some pneumonia that way. So what we had to do is we had to construct inside different things to try and counteract some of the things that we couldn't change in the shed in general.
you had big bales, I remember, that you sort of put out to sort of act as windbreaks.
Yeah, exactly. The big bales we did, and we tried to put a bit of cladding on the gates just to give it a little bit more barriers. And actually the bales worked two ways actually. So we just stuck bales in the middle of the whole pen, and so if the calves were feeling cold or wanted to shelter, they could go in either wherever they wanted around the bale. So if the wind was coming one way, they could stand on one side. And the other good thing about the bale was it was environmental enrichment. So the calves decided to try to destroy it, but they spent so much energy doing that and playing around in it, and also bedding themselves. It was a multi-purpose invention, I'd like to say, but that was part of us lowering stress and making sure that they're happy. And so yeah, we used to do that all the time. And yeah, and the calf pens were well bedded all the time because of that.
But the worst thing, I mean, you say that the drainage was bad, and the wind, and you wanted to lower stress, but I mean, you had 950 students who probably wanted to come up every weekend and stick their nose into the shed as well.
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? You'd think so.
We had a question, which is, there's a question here from a dairy farmer who uses Breedr, asking about colostrum, but what other factors might be important when looking at calf health?
Yeah, so I think with calf health, colostrum is key, because obviously in the when they're born they've got no immunity, and so again a cow, good quality colostrum from the cow and good transfer of that immunity into the calf is important. So just having good colostrum in a bucket and pouring it down the throat of a calf doesn't 100% guarantee that that colostrum is going to be all that goodness is going to be absorbed in the calf. And so what I sometimes would recommend is also test some calves just to make sure you're getting the transfer of the colostrum and the calf. Obviously, the other things that for good quality is vaccines. So again, I'd recommend vaccines, but it depends on your setting. So if you don't, so there are 4 or 5 main pathogens for pneumonia. Some farms will only have a problem with maybe 1 or 2. Some farms will have a problem with 4, and you can get the vaccine either just for 1, 2, 3, or 4. You can choose. So again, you can. I would say if your calf has had good colostrum and you're feeding it well and looking after it well, if you give a vaccine, that's going to boost its immunity, and especially for respiratory diseases, which are the biggest use of antibiotics in calves, the biggest cause of death in calves, and they're probably one of the biggest causes of growth checks, after weaning. So again, I think I'd say looking at vaccines and looking at your situation and investing in that. And then with health, immune cells are living bodies basically, so nutrition is key. So making sure your nutrition is good, making sure the calves consume the right amount of nutrition, because if you feed those white blood cells and you feed the bone marrow, then you're going to produce a good immunity that way. So I'd say those 3 are key. And then stress, because stress releases cortisol, and cortisol then suppresses the immune system. So if you can manage the stress, and that, for example, making sure when you go in, you're sort of quiet, making sure you do all your jobs quickly and then come out and leave them to rest, then they're gonna maintain that immunity really high.
I'm just going to share my screen as we talk about specifically vaccines, which is really interesting. So one of the things that we would really encourage is to give vaccines at the dairy farm before that calf has left to go to a rearing unit. And I give you a little example, because in Breedr, when you sell, when you put cattle up for sale, you get to see the medical history. So we can see here that this calf has had its vaccines. So when you're purchasing a calf in Breedr, you can be really sure that it's had the vaccines it needs for a productive life, and this adds value to the animal, because the calf rearer who's buying this, actually in this case the grower or the finisher who's buying this, is confident of the quality of the animals, and that's available for every single one of the animals. So it is really important, and it does add value, both in the short term, because that calf rearer will pay more for that calf, but also in the longer term because they'll keep on coming back, which is really important.
And I think you're right about the vaccine being on the home farm, because vaccines are only as good as the animal they're put in, and also the environment the animal's in. So if the animal is suffering from anything at any point, stress or any other infection, or if the environment is overwhelmed with pathogens, then the vaccine won't work. So if a calf has been given good colostrum, is in a clean environment, and you give a vaccine, then it'll take to it, and it'll give it that protection when it moves on through the process.
We've had another question, which, if it's all right to ask, is how do you find out which strain you've got, which I presumably means which strain of scour they're talking about? Would knowing which strain affect how you then treated it?
Yes, it would. So for example, if you can know the cause of, so scour basically means that the gut is not absorbing fluid, and also the excess fluid is coming out with the things, and really that's due to inflammation of the gut. And so understanding what causes that inflammation will help with treatment. So for example, if it's rotavirus, okay, then what you're doing is you just need to hydrate that calf, because it's a viral infection. Antibiotics aren't going to work against rotavirus, but what you can do therefore is then vaccinate the cow for rotavirus, and therefore the colostrum will have that protection in the future. If it's crypto, then again you can use products to fight Cryptosporidium. It's over 7 days, and you can treat them for that. An antibiotic won't treat crypto. So again, you'd be wasting your money and antibiotics by treating an animal that's positive for crypto. So again, knowing the cause can help you being more responsible with antibiotics, but also save you money on antibiotics. And also the other problem is, if you have a pathogen for, crypto or rotavirus, they can be a gateway to allow bacteria to come in. So again, knowing your pathogen and trying to sort it out early could maybe protect from secondary infections. So definitely worth, if you can, find out the cause.
Actually, I got that wrong. Thank you for the excellent answer. But what they were actually asking was about pneumonia. How can you know the strain of which strain of pneumonia you've got? And I didn't even realise there was more than one strain of pneumonia. So that's news to me.
So pneumonia has a number of different causes. It can be viral or bacterial. And actually, what happens is normally a lot of times a virus will go in, lower the immune system, and then you get a bacterial infection, which makes the whole thing worse. During an outbreak, you can take swabs, nose swabs. The vets can send that off for checking as well. And you can look for antibodies in the blood as well for these things. So it can be diagnosed. The problem is a lot of these pathogens are in the nose anyway. And it's only when the animal's immune system drops slightly does the pathogen then cause a problem. But if you do have an outbreak, you can test for it.
I had no idea. I've learned something new. Phoebe, you also work for Fibro, and what do Fibro sort of do? You were explaining it to me the other day, but I think maybe is it just worth spending a couple of minutes just explaining that?
Sure. Yeah. So with Fibro, our big area is stress and immunity, and that's what I do talk a lot about. And really, when you think about when you get a disease, it's normally after a stressful event. Normally, so if you think about a cow, after calving, you get mastitises, metritises, LDAs, all those problems within a month of calving, and it's because the calving period is quite a trigger for these things to happen. Now, when you think about calves, when do you get a lot of problems? When you move them from one place to another. So when new calves come on, within a couple of days, you start coughing, or after weaning, during that stressful period of weaning, you get issues maybe a week or two after. So with Fibro, we try and support farmers with their immunity, with working to reduce immunity. We also have a product called Omnigen. And so if you feed calves Omnigen or cows Omnigen before the stressful period, it boosts the immunity during the stressful period so that when they come out of it, their immunity is higher than normal. So you should get less pneumonia, higher growth rates in calves. In cows, you'll get less mastitis, metritis, and such like. And the knock-on effect is less antibiotic use. So that's where we talk about it with Fibro and Omnigen in that. And it can be done in the milk powder, and it can be done in starter pellets as well.
That all sounds very interesting. I think at Breedr we're very interested in nutrition, particularly as we grow our calf rearing opportunities. We have a question from an anonymous attendee, which I don't think you and I will be able to answer, but is will the RAU be running the calf rearing course again? But they've sold the farm, so I don't think they are.
I wish they could. Yeah, they weren't, unfortunately. It was a shame, but there you go. It's a shame. Yeah.
What I will say though is if there is of interest, if there's enough people that we could host a calf rearing course at Breedr. So if that's interesting to people, we could hold a couple of day workshop somewhere. So if that is of interest, do I'm going to give you my email. If that is of interest, we could definitely look at doing that. And we've got great people like Phoebe at our disposal who could come and talk. Now, Phoebe, you've mentioned quite a few times antibiotic use. Do you know what eMedicine Hub is? Have you come across that in your travels?
The eMedicine Hub, yes, I've come across it, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not an expert on that.
No, that's all right, because yeah. I am.
Okay, perfect.
So just so everyone can see, in Breedr, it's really easy to log your medicines. You've got a medicine cabinet here. It's got all your medicines on your phone. But one of the things you can do is just scan the bottle in with your phone camera. So you just come in here and you scan the QR code, and that brings across all your details. Makes it really easy to record medicine usage. Now, reducing, as an industry, reducing our antibiotic usage is really important, because these are, one, it's a selling point. in international trades, we can say that, you know, we've got the lowest amount of antibiotic use per kilo of beef produced for anyone in the world, but stuff like that. But we can't do that if we don't have the data. So what we do at Breedr is make it really easy to record the data, and then AHDB have a new portal called eMedicine Hub. So if you Google eMedicine Hub AHDB, and what you need to do is download this report. So this is all your animals in the year, and this is all of the antibiotics you've used in a year. Actually, it's all of your medicines in total, but they're only really interested in your antibiotics and your wormers. And you can download these reports and then upload them. So if you are a calf rearer or a beef farmer and you're using Breedr, I really recommend getting involved in this. You get some reports back which benchmarks you where you sit in relation to the national, but also you'll be helping the industry, you know, with data. So we've made it really easy for you guys to get that report out and then share that with AHDB, which I really recommend to you all. We have another question. Could you explain the Omnigen, what Omnigen is and how it works?
Yes, Omnigen is a combination of some natural products, and the patent is the way it's been put together. It's put together in the US and brought over to to Europe and the UK. And what it does is it's to do with neutrophils, which are the most popular, the biggest number of white blood cells in your body, and they're the first line of defense. So what happens is the neutrophils are normally sort of sticking on your white blood cell, on your normal blood vessels, and when an infection comes in, they go down and they fight it. When you are stressed, these neutrophils don't stick, and they jet off, and so they can't get to the fight of infection. What Omnigen does is it increase that stickiness, so the neutrophils can respond quicker. So we've done you know, over 100 studies, over 244 herd study in the Europe, and 1,004 herd study in the US, with over 700,000 animals, looking at observations of animals being fed it and how it changes, and the improvements made. For example, mastitis go down about 30%. And metritis is about 20. We've also done calf studies, so we've looked at veal calves and Holstein calves and Jersey calves, and we've looked at the effect on the growth rates and antibiotic usage and pneumonia rates. And again, we've proven that they all reduce and the growth rates increase. And the final thing is then we've taken bloods and tried to prove that the white blood cell activities increased. So we've done that in mice, we've done that in sheep, and we've done that in cattle, and we've proved that. And we've got about 20 peer-reviewed papers and over 100 papers of research to go with it. So as a product, it's probably the most researched nutritional product in the world.
And if people want to find out more, particularly this farmer, if they want to find out more, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, if they want, they can email me, and I'm happy to come and visit your farm and have a chat and just see, you know, if there's anything else you can do, or if this could be the right thing. You can visit the website at I'll put it in the chat anyway, europefibro.com. So yeah, I'm happy to chat with anyone about it. And it's one of those things where I don't want people to use it unless it's the right thing for them. So I think it's not the silver bullet for all your problems, because if it's something as simple as changing your feed station, then just do that. But if you are doing as much as you can and you want to do something more, then I would say it's definitely something to try. And we you know, people like Arla, Muller, and all these dairy producers are all on board with it as well. So it's fairly new in the UK. It's only been around for 4 years.
Well, perfect. If chuck it in the chat now, so everyone's got it. But unless we have any other questions, I think we might call time there. Next, well, thank you first of all for joining me this evening, Feed. Next month we are talking about. I haven't put a topic in yet for next month. Oh yes, I have. Getting the most from your beef byproduct. So we're looking at getting the most from our beef cattle byproducts. So and I know we're going to have two differing opinions. We're going to have a dairy farmer who rears their own cattle, their own beef calves, and we're going to have a dairy farmer who gets rid of them at 7 days old, and we're going to talk about the different options available to you. So that's going to be next month, which I'm really excited. We're going to have two dairy farmers to battle it out. Fee, thank you again for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
No, not at all. And you are very much looking forward to getting out on farms. So if people want to take you up on the offer, they should definitely email you.
Even if you just want to chat about your farm, I'm happy to come and visit and come and see you guys.
Please, the man's been locked in his house with his children for the last 4 months. He's desperate. Come on.
I'm waiting for the 9th of March to send them off, and then I'm out.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Fee. Thank you for joining me, everyone. We're going to share the recording around, so everyone's got a copy. And any questions, get in touch and let us know how we can help.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. Ta-da.
Bye.